Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the dim glow of morning, veiled by hazy curtains, a bewildered groan emerged from within a heap of tangled sheets. The room, though modest, felt immense in the disoriented gaze that surveyed it. The night's festivities were but a blur of flashing lights, echoing laughter, and a persistent, metallic aftertaste. What was I thinking? The muttered words held a peculiar unfamiliarity, as if heard from a stranger's mouth. As the covers were reluctantly pushed aside, the world momentarily seemed to rest in its proper order. Then, everything spun into chaos. Hands, unfamiliar in their dainty proportions, seemed to betray their owner. Arms, slender and delicate, did not correspond with the image embedded in his mind. And the chest, unmistakably feminine, added further confusion. A horrified shriek, distinctively female, reverberated through the confined space. Where his broad shoulders and flat chest should have been, there were now soft curves. His hands trembled as they explored unfamiliar territory, confirming with mounting horror that he now possessed a completely female form.
"This isn't happening,"
Grant whispered, the high-pitched voice only intensifying the panic.
"This is a dream. A nightmare."
But pinching himself, herself, only resulted in pain, not awakening. Grant stumbled to the bathroom, heart racing, and when he flipped on the light switch, the mirror reflected a stranger. A young woman with delicate features and disheveled blonde hair stared back, her green eyes wide with the same terror Grant felt coursing through him. "What the hell happened at that party?" he whispered to his reflection, watching plush lips form unfamiliar words. Last night was Halloween, Ethan's annual Costume or Catastrophe bash. Grant remembered arriving in a half-hearted zombie costume, remembered the first few drinks, remembered Ethan's roommate Curtis offering him something special he'd mixed up. After that, things got fuzzy. A frantic search for his phone revealed it had fallen between the bed and wall. With shaking hands, he dialed Ethan, almost dropping the device twice.
"Hello?"
Ethan's voice was rough with sleep.
"Ethan, it's Grant. Something's happened." "Who is this?"
Ethan interrupted, suspicion evident in his voice.
"It's Grant! Your roommate from freshman year. I was at your party last night and now I'm..." Words failed him. "Look, lady, I don't know how you got this number, but it's 8 a.m. after a major party, and I'm not in the mood for pranks."
"This isn't a prank. I'm Grant. Something happened at your party. I think someone might have drugged me or... Okay, that's not funny. Grant's fine. He left around midnight, said he wasn't feeling well. Now leave me alone." The call ended abruptly. Grant stared at the phone. Left at midnight? That couldn't be right. He remembered being there much later. The panic returned with greater intensity. No one would believe him. How could they? He didn't even believe it himself. A knock at the door made Grant jump.
"Morgan, your alarm's been going off for 20 minutes. Some of us are trying to sleep off hangovers, you know."
The irritated voice of his hallmate Devin came through the door. Grant froze. He couldn't open the door looking like this.
"Sorry, I'm sick. Won't happen again." "Whatever, man. Just turn it off."
Footsteps retreated down the hall, and Grant exhaled shakily. The alarm clock continued its insistent beeping. He hadn't even noticed it in his panic. He silenced it, then sank to the floor, trembling. What now? He couldn't stay in his room forever. People would come looking for him eventually. Classes, assignments, his part-time job at the campus bookstore. Life wouldn't wait for this impossible situation to resolve itself. Grant's eyes fell on the small closet where his limited wardrobe hung. Nothing there would fit this new body properly. His boxers were already sliding down slender hips, and his t-shirt hung loosely over his new chest.
"One problem at a time," he muttered. "Clothes first, then figure out what happened."
The dorm was co-ed, which meant he might be able to slip out without attracting too much attention if he could find something appropriate to wear. Grant rummaged through his drawers, eventually finding a pair of sweatpants with a drawstring he could tighten and a hoodie large enough to conceal his new chest. He pulled the hood up to shadow his face and took a deep breath before opening the door a crack. The hallway was mercifully empty. Most students were either still asleep or already in morning classes. The campus store was a short walk from the dorm. Grant kept his head down, avoiding eye contact with anyone he passed. Inside, he grabbed the basic necessities: underwear, a simple blue t-shirt, and jeans, guessing at sizes based on his new proportions. He added a flowing pink sundress and white sandals to the pile, figuring they might help him blend in better than ill-fitting men's clothes.
"Finding everything okay?"
The cashier smiled as Grant approached the counter.
"Yes, thanks,"
Grant mumbled, keeping his eyes down as he paid with his credit card. The cashier glanced at the card, then at Grant.
"Is this your boyfriend's card?"
"No, it's mine. I'm having a bad hair day." Grant tugged the hood lower. The cashier looked skeptical but rang up the purchase.
"Well, the sundress will look lovely with your coloring."
"Thanks," Grant muttered, grabbing the shopping bag and hurrying out before further questions could be asked. Back in his room, Grant locked the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. He laid out his purchases on the bed and stared at them. The reality of his situation was beginning to sink in. He would have to wear these clothes, women's clothes, because they were now appropriate for his body. After a quick shower, during which he kept his eyes firmly closed most of the time, Grant dried off and began the awkward process of dressing himself. The underwear was strange and constricting in new places. The jeans fit better than expected, hugging curves that hadn't existed yesterday. The blue t-shirt clung to his chest in a way that made him deeply uncomfortable. He looked in the mirror and saw a disheveled young woman with messy blonde hair staring back. There was no trace of Grant Morgan in that reflection.
"I need answers,"
he said to his reflection.
"And I know exactly who might have them."
Curtis, Ethan's roommate, had given him that strange drink. If anyone knew what had happened, it would be him. Grant sent a text to Curtis.
"Need to talk to you about last night. Important."
While waiting for a reply, he tried to make himself look more presentable. He ran fingers through tangled blonde hair, wondering how women managed such long tresses every day. After several painful minutes, he managed to smooth it into something less chaotic. His phone buzzed with Curtis's reply.
"Who is this?"
Grant groaned in frustration. Right. New body, but the same phone.
"It's Grant. Something happened. Need to talk in person."
There was a long pause before Curtis replied.
"Grant's in class right now. Stop messing around."
Grant stared at the phone. In class? How could he be in class when he was here? Unless... A horrible thought occurred to him. What if someone else was walking around in his body right now? He typed frantically.
"Please, just meet me. Quad near the science building. 20 minutes. It's important."
After another pause. Fine, but this better not be weird. Grant changed into the pink sundress, figuring it would be easier to be accepted as a woman than to explain his situation to everyone he encountered. The fabric felt strange against his skin, light and flowing. The white sandals were a size too large, but would have to do. He caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror before leaving. The pink dress actually suited his new body, complementing the blonde hair that fell just past his shoulders. If he hadn't been living this nightmare, he might have thought the woman in the reflection was attractive. The walk to the quad was nerve-wracking. Every step in the unfamiliar sandals required concentration, and he could feel eyes on him as he passed. Was it because people recognized something off about him, or was it simply because he was now in a form that attracted attention? Curtis was already waiting by the bench near the science building, scrolling through his phone. He looked up as Grant approached, confusion evident on his face.
"Curtis,"
Grant said, sitting down beside him.
It's me, Grant.
Curtis blinked, then laughed.
"Okay, sure.
And I'm the dean.
Listen to me."
Grant leaned closer, lowering his voice.
"Last night at the party, you gave me something to drink. Something special, you said. After that, everything's fuzzy. I woke up this morning like this."
He gestured to his transformed body. Curtis's amused expression faded, replaced by concern.
"Look, I don't know what your deal is. Freshman year, you set off the fire alarm trying to make grilled cheese in the contraband toaster you hid under your bed,"
Grant said quickly.
"Junior prom, you threw up in Principal Harris's car and blamed it on Todd Mitchell. Last semester, you confessed you still sleep with the stuffed penguin your grandmother gave you when you were 8. No one knows that, except me."
Curtis's face had gone pale.
That's...
"How did you—" "Because I'm Grant. Something happened to me last night, and I need to know what was in that drink."
Curtis stood up, backing away.
This isn't funny. I don't know how you know those things, but... Damn it, Curtis. Look at me. Really look.
Grant stood too, grabbing Curtis's arm.
"It's me! Inside this body that isn't mine. What did you give me?"
Curtis stared into Grant's eyes, searching. Something he saw there made him sink slowly back onto the bench.
Holy shit.
He whispered.
Grant?
"Yes. Now tell me what was in that drink."
Curtis ran a hand through his hair.
"It was just supposed to be a joke. Marcus got this stuff from some weird shop downtown. Said it would make whoever drank it believe they'd transformed for a few hours. Just a mind trip, like a mild hallucination. Nothing real." "Well, clearly it did more than that."
Grant gestured at his female form.
"That's impossible," Curtis insisted. "Marcus said it was just herbs and stuff. Nothing illegal, nothing dangerous." "Herbs don't do this, Curtis. Look at me." Curtis shook his head. "I need to find Marcus.
This is messed up. Just wait here."
Before Grant could protest, Curtis was jogging across the quad, phone pressed to his ear. Grant sank onto the bench, fighting back tears of frustration. The pink sundress rustled around his legs, a constant reminder of his transformation. Several male students walking by turned to look at him, and he realized with an uncomfortable jolt that they were checking him out. 20 minutes later, Curtis returned with Marcus in tow. Marcus took one look at Grant and let out a low whistle.
Dude, is this for real?
Marcus asked Curtis.
"Apparently,"
Curtis replied.
"You said that stuff was harmless."
Marcus held up his hands defensively.
"It was supposed to be. The guy at the shop guaranteed it."
What guy?
Grant demanded, standing up.
"What shop?" Someplace downtown called Transformations. Weird little hole in the wall. The owner's this old guy who calls himself Merlin. Merlin? Like the wizard? Grant would have laughed if the situation weren't so dire. Yeah, I thought it was just part of his shtick. Look, he said the potion would create a vivid hallucination of transformation for a few hours, then wear off. That's all. Well, it's been more than a few hours, and this is definitely not a hallucination, Grant said. We need to go to this shop. Now. The three of them piled into Marcus's car. Grant sat in the back, trying to remember how women typically sat in dresses. It felt strange to have to consider such things.
So, what's it like?
Marcus asked, glancing at Grant in the rearview mirror.
What's what like? Being a chick? Is it weird?
Grant glared at him.
Yes, Marcus, it's weird. It's terrifying. I didn't ask for this.
Sorry, man. I mean, woman? What do I call you now? Grant, I'm still me. Just in the wrong body. The drive downtown took 20 minutes. Marcus parked in front of a narrow storefront wedged between a laundromat and a pawn shop. The sign above the door simply read, Transformations, in faded gold lettering.
This is it,
Marcus said, unnecessarily. Grant was out of the car before it fully stopped, striding toward the shop with as much confidence as he could muster in unfamiliar sandals and a sundress. The bell above the door jingled as he pushed it open. The interior was dimly lit and smelled of incense and old books. Shelves lined the walls, filled with bottles, jars, and strange artifacts. Behind a cluttered counter stood an elderly man with a long white beard and piercing blue eyes.
Ah,
the old man said, his gaze fixing on Grant.
I wondered when you'd arrive.
You! Grant pointed an accusatory finger. You're responsible for this. The old man, Merlin, presumably, tilted his head. I provide the means, not the choice. Your means turned me into a woman. Merlin's bushy eyebrows rose. Did it now? Interesting. Most only experience the illusion of transformation. Curtis and Marcus entered the shop behind Grant. Merlin glanced at them, then back to Grant. I see. The potion was not meant for you directly. It was given to you. His gaze shifted to Marcus. By you, I presume. Marcus shuffled uncomfortably. It was just supposed to be a prank. Intentions matter with transformative magic, Merlin said quietly, as does the recipient's true nature. What does that mean? Grant demanded. Can you fix this? Merlin came around the counter, circling Grant with a thoughtful expression. The physical change suggests the potion resonated with something deep within you, something authentic. That's ridiculous! Grant protested. I never wanted to be a woman. Conscious desires are but the surface of our true selves, Merlin replied cryptically.
The potion merely peels back layers. I don't care about layers or authentic selves or whatever. I want my body back.
Merlin stopped his circling and faced Grant directly.
That may not be possible. What?
Grant's voice rose in pitch. What do you mean may not be possible? The transformation appears complete and integrated. To reverse it might cause more harm than good. Grant felt lightheaded. The room seemed to spin around him. So I'm stuck like this? Forever? Not stuck, Merlin corrected gently. Freed, perhaps. The potion brings forth what already exists within. It cannot create what is not there. That's bull. Can't you at least try to change him back?
Curtis interrupted. Merlin considered this.
I can prepare a countermeasure, but I make no promises. Return in 3 days' time.
3 days?
Grant exclaimed. What am I supposed to do for 3 days?
Live, Merlin said simply.
Experience. Learn.
Outside the shop, Grant leaned against the brick wall, trying to process what had just happened.
3 days. I have to be this for 3 more days. Look on the bright side,
Marcus offered.
You look good as a girl.
Grant shot him a withering look.
Not helping,
Curtis muttered, elbowing Marcus.
Let's get you back to campus. You can lay low until we figure this out.
The ride back was silent. Grant stared out the window, watching the city pass by in a blur. 3 days as a woman. How would he manage classes? His job? What would he tell people?
You'll need a name,
Curtis said suddenly.
If you're going to be like this for a few days, you can't introduce yourself as Grant.
Grant hadn't considered that.
I guess you're right. What about Juliet?
Marcus suggested. Since Grant is kinda like Romeo, all romantic and stuff.
I am not romantic,
Grant protested, but the name lingered. Juliet. He tested it out. It felt strange on his tongue, but not entirely wrong.
Juliet Morgan.
Curtis nodded.
Works for me.
Back in his dorm room, Grant, or Juliet, as she would need to be known temporarily, sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the phone in her hands. She had 3 missed calls from her shift manager at the bookstore. She couldn't go to work like this, but she also couldn't afford to lose the job. With a deep breath, she dialed the number. Campus Books. This is Howard. Hi, Howard. This is Grant Morgan's sister, Juliet. The lie came surprisingly easily. Grant is really sick with the flu. He asked me to call and let you know he can't make his shifts for the next few days. Oh, that's too bad. Tell him to get better soon. We're short-staffed as it is. Howard sounded annoyed, but accepting. Can you come in for him? Me? Juliet hadn't expected that. Yeah, if you're on campus already, same hours, same pay, you'd be doing us a huge favor. Juliet hesitated. On one hand, it would solve the immediate problem of lost income. On the other, it meant more time in public as a woman. I guess I could. Great. Can you start tomorrow morning, 8 to noon? Sure, Juliet agreed, wondering what she'd just gotten herself into. After hanging up, she tackled the next problem. Appearance. If she was going to live as Juliet for a few days, she needed to look the part. Her hair was a mess, she had no makeup, and the one pink sundress wouldn't get her through 3 days. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find a young woman with curly brown hair standing there. Oh, the woman said, looking confused. I was looking for Grant Morgan. He's not here right now. I'm his sister, Juliet. The woman frowned. Grant never mentioned having a sister. We're not close, Juliet said quickly. I'm just visiting for a few days. And you are? Rachel Stevens. We have comparative literature together. Rachel peered past Juliet into the room. When do you expect him back? Not for a few days. He's got the flu, staying with a friend off campus to avoid spreading it through the dorms. Rachel nodded slowly. Well, can you tell him I stopped by? We're supposed to be working on a group project. Of course, Juliet promised. As Rachel turned to leave, an idea struck her. Actually, Rachel, I could use some help. Rachel turned back, eyebrows raised in question. I'm not very good with makeup and stuff. Do you think you could give me some pointers? It would really help me out. Rachel looked surprised, but then smiled. Sure, I guess. When? Now? If you're not busy? 20 minutes later, Juliet was sitting on the edge of her bed, while Rachel demonstrated basic makeup techniques using supplies she'd retrieved from her own room. You've really never worn makeup before? Rachel asked, applying foundation to Juliet's face. Not really, Juliet admitted. My mother wasn't into that stuff. Well, you have amazing skin, so you don't need much. Just a little foundation to even out your tone, some mascara to enhance those lashes, which are already ridiculous, by the way. Totally unfair. And maybe a bit of lip gloss. Juliet watched carefully, mentally taking notes. If she was going to pull this off, she needed to learn quickly. So, how long are you staying? Rachel asked as she applied mascara to Juliet's lashes. Just a few days, until Grant feels better. You two don't look much alike. Juliet tensed. Different fathers. Rachel seemed to accept this.
There. Take a look.
Juliet turned to the mirror and almost gasped. The woman looking back at her was undeniably beautiful. Subtle makeup enhancing her natural features, bringing out the green of her eyes and the fullness of her lips. Thank you, she said softly. It's different. Rachel smiled. Good different, I hope. Now, what about your hair? Want me to show you a few simple styles? By the time Rachel left, Juliet had received a crash course in basic makeup application, hairstyling, and even a few tips on feminine body language. It was overwhelming, but also strangely fascinating. The next morning, Juliet woke early to prepare for her shift at the bookstore. She chose the pink sundress again, now paired with a light cardigan she'd borrowed from Rachel. The makeup process took 3 attempts before she was satisfied, and styling her blonde hair into a simple ponytail proved challenging with unpracticed hands. The walk to the campus bookstore felt like running a gauntlet. Every step in the white sandals required concentration, and she was acutely aware of gazes following her progress across the quad. Was she walking correctly? Did the sundress look appropriate? Was her makeup obvious? Howard greeted her at the bookstore with a harried expression. You must be Juliet. Thank God you're here. The morning rush is about to start. The next 4 hours were a whirlwind of activity. Students flooded in for last-minute textbooks and supplies, keeping Juliet too busy to worry about her appearance or mannerisms. By noon, she had settled into a rhythm, her initial awkwardness fading as she focused on the tasks at hand.
You're a natural,
Howard commented as her shift ended.
Much better than your brother, if I'm being honest. Any chance you're sticking around when he recovers?
Juliet managed a smile. Probably not, but thanks for the vote of confidence. On her way back to the dorm, Juliet stopped at a small boutique just off campus. Using the last of her spending money, she purchased 2 more outfits, a casual blue dress and a pair of jeans with a floral blouse. The saleswoman helped her find the correct sizes and suggested accessories that would complement each outfit. You have such a lovely figure, the woman commented. The blue really brings out your eyes. Thank you, Juliet replied, feeling a strange warmth at the compliment. That evening, Curtis texted, Checked with Merlin. Counter potion will be ready day after tomorrow. Hanging in there? Juliet stared at the message for a long moment before replying. Doing okay. Learning a lot. And she was learning. Not just about makeup and clothes, but about how differently the world responded to her as a woman. Doors were held open. Smiles came more readily from strangers, but there were also the uncomfortable stares, the way some men's eyes lingered too long. The following day brought new challenges. Juliet had agreed to cover another shift at the bookstore, and afterward, she had a decision to make: attend her comparative literature class or skip it. On one hand, missing class meant falling behind. On the other, attending meant risking exposure. In the end, curiosity won out. Wearing the blue dress and with her blonde hair styled in loose waves as Rachel had shown her, Juliet slipped into the lecture hall just as class was beginning. She took a seat at the back, hoping to remain inconspicuous. Rachel spotted her almost immediately, waving her over to an empty seat nearby. "Hey, Juliet! How's it going?" "Fine, thanks," Juliet whispered as she settled into the offered seat. "Just thought I'd sit in on Grant's class, take notes for him." "That's nice of you. Professor Winters always gives killer exams." Throughout the lecture, Juliet found herself genuinely engaged with the material. Without the usual social pressures she felt as Grant, the need to appear disinterested to fit in with his male friends, she found herself raising her hand to answer questions, contributing to discussions. "Excellent point, Miss." Professor Winters paused after Juliet's third contribution. "Morgan, Juliet Morgan." "Well, Miss Morgan, I wish more of my students shared your insight. Perhaps you could encourage your brother to participate more when he returns." After class, several students approached to introduce themselves, including a tall young man named David, who seemed particularly interested. "First time I've seen you around campus," he said, falling into step beside her as she left the building. "Are you a transfer?" "Just visiting," Juliet replied, uncomfortably aware of his proximity. "For a few days." "Well, a few of us are getting together at the Cozy Bean later, if you want to join. Around 7? Juliet hesitated. Part of her, the part that was still thinking like Grant, recognized this as a potential romantic overture and wanted to decline immediately. But another part was curious about experiencing social interactions from this new perspective. "Maybe," she said finally. "I might stop by." Back in her room, Juliet stared at her phone, debating whether to actually go to the coffee shop. Curtis had texted again. "Merlin says counter potion will be ready tomorrow afternoon. Almost done with this crazy experience." Tomorrow afternoon. Less than 24 hours left as Juliet before returning to life as Grant. The thought should have brought pure relief, but instead, she felt a strange mixture of emotions. At 7:15, Juliet pushed open the door to the Cozy Bean. She'd chosen the jeans and floral blouse, paired with the white sandals. Her makeup was subtle but effective, and her blonde hair hung loose around her shoulders. David waved from a corner table where he sat with 3 other students, 2 women and another man. Juliet recognized them vaguely from various classes, but had never interacted with them as Grant. "You came!" David's face lit up. "Everyone, this is Juliet. She's visiting her brother. You know Grant Morgan?" The others nodded politely, making room for her at the table. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of conversation, laughter, and surprisingly comfortable social interaction. Juliet found herself sharing opinions and stories she never would have as Grant, receiving attentive responses rather than the dismissive reactions she was accustomed to from the same people. "You're nothing like your brother," one of the women, Amber, commented. "He's so reserved. You're much more outgoing." "People change depending on the company they keep," Juliet replied carefully. As the evening wound down, David offered to walk her back to her dorm. Under normal circumstances, Grant would have found the offer presumptuous, but Juliet recognized the gesture for what it was, partly genuine courtesy, partly an opportunity to extend their time together. "So, how long are you in town?" David asked, as they strolled across the darkened campus. "I leave tomorrow, actually."
"That's too bad,"
he said, looking genuinely disappointed. "I was hoping we might get to know each other better." Juliet felt a complicated twist of emotions. In less than a day, she would be Grant again, and this connection, whatever it was, would be impossible to explore. "It's probably for the best," she said softly. "I'm going through some changes right now." At her dorm door, David hesitated, then leaned down to kiss her cheek.
"If you're ever back in town, look me up."
Juliet nodded, knowing it would never happen, at least not as herself. "Good night, David." Inside her room, Juliet sank onto the bed, touching the spot on her cheek where David's lips had brushed. Tomorrow, she would return to Merlin's shop and drink the counter potion. Tomorrow, she would be Grant again. The thought should have been exciting, a relief after days of confusion and adjustment. Instead, she felt a growing sense of unease. What if Merlin was right? What if the potion had revealed something authentic about her? The past few days had been challenging but also illuminating. As Juliet, she felt freer, more herself in some indefinable way. Sleep came fitfully, her dreams a confusion of identities and possibilities. The next morning, Juliet dressed in the pink sundress, her first and perhaps last outfit as a woman. She styled her blonde hair with care, applied makeup with the techniques Rachel had taught her, and took one final look in the mirror. "Goodbye, Juliet," she whispered to her reflection. Curtis was waiting outside the dorm in Marcus's car.
"Ready to go get yourself back to normal?"
Juliet hesitated before climbing into the passenger seat. What if I don't want to go back?" Curtis stared at her.
"What are you talking about? You've been freaking out about this for days."
"I know, but..." Juliet struggled to articulate the complex emotions swirling inside her. What if Merlin was right? What if this is who I'm really meant to be?
Dude, sorry, Juliet. This is just the potion talking. Once you're back to normal, you'll see this was all just a temporary insanity.
But as they drove toward downtown, Juliet's certainty grew. The past few days hadn't been just about learning to apply makeup or walk in sandals. They had been about experiencing the world from a perspective that felt surprisingly right, despite its newness. Merlin was waiting for them in the shop, a small vial of amber liquid in his hand.
"The counter potion,"
he announced as they entered.
"As promised."
Juliet approached slowly, eyeing the vial but making no move to take it. What if I don't drink it? Merlin's eyes twinkled.
"Then you remain as you are."
Forever? The transformation appears stable. Without intervention, it would indeed be permanent. Curtis stepped forward.
"You can't be serious. Grant, think about what you're saying."
Juliet turned to him. I have thought about it. More than you know. For the first time in my life, I feel aligned. Like the discord I've always felt inside has finally quieted. But what about your life, your family, your future? My life continues, just differently than planned. As for family, Juliet shrugged. They'll adjust or they won't. And my future? Maybe it's brighter this way. Merlin watched the exchange with knowing eyes. The choice is yours, as it always has been. Juliet took a deep breath, looking from the potion to Curtis to Merlin. I choose to remain as I am, as Juliet.
You're sure about this?
Curtis asked, his expression a mixture of concern and confusion. More sure than I've been about anything, Juliet replied. This feels right. It feels true. Merlin nodded, returning the vial to a shelf behind the counter.
The authentic self cannot be denied forever. Sometimes it takes a catalyst to reveal what has always been there, beneath the surface.
Curtis shook his head.
I don't understand,
but if this is really what you want... It is, Juliet said firmly. I know it won't be easy. There will be explanations to give, adjustments to make. And so, with each step, Juliet Morgan left behind the shadows of her past. The sun seemed to shine brighter with every passing moment, illuminating her journey towards self-acceptance. The journey may have begun with a strange potion, but it was Juliet's courage that led her to this defining moment. She embraced the uncertainty of the future, knowing that every challenge was a step closer to her true self. As they drove through the city, Curtis witnessed the transformation of his friend. The person in the passenger seat was not just Juliet Morgan, but someone who had blossomed into their true identity. It was as if the world had gained a new color, vibrant and unique, in the form of this newfound Juliet. In time, the challenges she anticipated presented themselves. Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!